You do not choose this. No one does. You are property before you are a person. The law that governs you was written before your grandfather's grandfather drew his first breath. The Romans did not invent slavery. They perfected it. They built an empire on the specific, daily, ordinary fact of it, and at its height. 1 in every 3 people walking the streets of Rome was exactly what you are right now. Not a prisoner, not a criminal, not a conquered soldier waiting for ransom. Property. The word for you is service. It comes from server, to preserve, to keep, to save. The Romans told themselves they saved you. From death on a battlefield, from poverty, from the chaos outside their borders. They saved you the way a man saves a horse, because the horse is useful, and a dead horse serves no one. You are useful. That is the first thing you learn. That is the only thing that matters now. Level 1. The market age. Unknown. Year. Somewhere between 100 BC and 100 AD. It does not matter which. You are standing on a raised wooden platform in the forum. Your feet are chalked white. This is not decoration. White chalk on the feet means you are newly imported, foreign-born, not Roman-raised, and buyers know exactly what that means. It means your Latin is poor. It means your habits are wrong. It means you will require breaking in, the way a new tool requires fitting to the hand. You're wearing a wooden sign around your neck. The sign lists what you are: age, origin, skills, if any, health status, whether you have attempted escape, whether you have a history of violence, whether you sleep without issue. The sign tells them everything about you that they consider worth knowing. And none of it includes your name, because your name, the one your mother used, does not appear anywhere on this platform. A man walks a slow circle around you. He checks your teeth the way you would check a horse's teeth. He squeezes your arm above the elbow to feel the muscle. He asks you to walk the length of the platform and back, watching the movement of your hips and knees for signs of injury you might be hiding. Historians record that buyers at Roman slave markets were specifically warned to watch for slaves who straightened their posture and walked without limp only while being observed, then returned to a shuffle when attention moved elsewhere. You know this. You do not limp. You are sold for somewhere between 500 and 2,000 sesterces, depending on your skills, your age, your health, the day's market mood. A skilled Greek tutor sells for 100,000. An unskilled laborer sells for less than a good mule. You will not know where you fall on that scale. You will not be told the number. The number is not for you. You belong to someone now. You do not know their name yet. You will learn it before they learn yours. Level 2. The household. Month 3. The city of Rome. The house is larger than anything you have known. There are 23 other slaves inside it. You learn this slowly. The way you learn everything here, through observation, through silence, through watching who speaks to whom, and who looks at the floor when the master walks past. There is a hierarchy inside this house that has nothing to do with the master. The slaves have built their own order inside the larger order, and you are at the bottom of it, and everyone makes sure you understand that without saying it directly. The atrium is your first responsibility. Every morning before the household wakes, you sweep it. You fill the small fountain at its center. You remove any lamp that burned through the night. You do this in darkness, with the specific silence of someone who has learned that waking the master before he chooses to wake is a category of mistake you cannot afford to make twice. The smell of the house at this hour is olive oil and cold stone and wood smoke from the kitchen 3 rooms back. You stop noticing the smell by week 6. What you do not stop noticing is the door, the front door, the iron hinges of it. The specific sound it makes when it opens from outside. You notice this, the way water notices the lowest point in a room automatically, without deciding to. Every slave in a Roman household develops this awareness. It is not fear exactly. Fear requires a specific object. This is more like a permanent recalibration of your senses, toward anything that represents the boundary between inside and outside, between property and the streets, where property that walks away becomes a fugitive. A fugitive slave in Rome is hunted by professional slave catchers called fugitiveri. They are paid per recovery. They are not paid to return you undamaged. Level 3. The name month 7. Your master names you. Not your name, a name. Romans commonly renamed slaves upon purchase. particularly foreign-born slaves whose original names were difficult to pronounce or remember. Some were given Greek names because Greek slaves were considered cultured, and the name added a certain quality to the household's reputation. Some were given simple Latin names. Some were given the names of gods as a kind of joke that everyone in the house understood and none of the slaves laughed at. You answered to the new name within 3 weeks. This is the part no one tells you about, not the renaming itself, but the speed at which you begin to respond to it. The speed at which the old name starts to require a moment of retrieval rather than arriving instantly. You are not forgetting it. You tell yourself this. You are storing it somewhere safer, somewhere the household cannot reach. But you respond to the new name before you are fully conscious of responding. In one morning, perhaps month 4, perhaps month 5, you do not remember exactly when you hear someone say your name. The real one, the first one, in a conversation between 2 other slaves who have not yet learned to be careful, and you do not turn your head. You realize this 3 seconds later. You stand very still in the atrium with the broom in your hands and the cold morning stone under your feet. You understand something that cannot be undone by understanding it. Level 4, the law, year 2. You have no legal existence. This is not a metaphor. Under Roman law, the most sophisticated legal system the ancient world produced, the framework on which most of modern Western law is still built, you are classified as race, which means thing, not person, thing. A slave in Rome could not own property, could not enter a legal contract, could not marry, could not testify in court except under torture, on the legal theory that a person with nothing to lose had no incentive to tell the truth without it. Your master can sell you. He can hire you out to other households or businesses for a fee he collects. He can free you, which in Rome is called manumission, and comes with its own elaborate legal ritual. He can punish you by any means short of killing you without cause, though the without cause provision is enforced with the reliability you might expect from a court system that classifies you as furniture. Under the lex aquilia, if someone injures you, they owe compensation to your master for the damage to his property. There is a slave in the household named Marcus, not his real name, his given name like yours, who has been here 11 years. He knows things about the law that took you months to understand. He explained the peculium to you in the kitchen on a Tuesday morning while the cook was shouting about something in the courtyard. The peculium is money or property a master might allow a slave to accumulate and technically control, even though legally it still belongs to the master and can be revoked at any moment without notice or justification. Some slaves buy their own freedom with their peculium. This takes, on average, between 10 and 20 years. Marcus has been saving for 11. He does not discuss how much he has. He does not discuss how much he needs. He discusses it the way men discuss something that might disappear if spoken about directly. Level 5, the work year 3, before the sun. The day begins at a specific pressure in the chest that is not quite dread and not quite readiness. You are a household slave, which means you are somewhere in the middle of the Roman slave economy, not in the mines, where life expectancy for a slave was measured in months, and the work was so lethal that it was sometimes used as a death sentence for criminals. And not in the fields of Sicily, where the great slave revolts of the previous century were born from conditions so unspeakable that Spartacus, who led the largest of them, chose open battle against the most powerful military on earth over one more season of agricultural labor. You're in a house. You carry things. You clean things. You prepare food or serve it or stand in a specific location during meals in case something is needed. You accompany your master into the city because a man of standing does not walk through. Rome alone, he walks with his slaves behind him, and the number of slaves tells the street exactly how much standing he has. You walk 3 steps behind. You've learned to read the back of his neck. The tension in his shoulders when a meeting went wrong, the particular way he walks when he is about to make a decision that will affect the household. You have learned him the way a sailor learns weather, not because you admire him, but because your conditions are determined entirely by his moods, and moods have tells if you watch long enough. This knowledge keeps you fed. This knowledge keeps you unbeaten. This is the skill that no one lists on the wooden sign at the market. Level 6, the punishment year 4. A Wednesday. You will not forget it was Wednesday. The thing about punishment in a Roman household is that it exists on a spectrum so wide that the word itself becomes inadequate. On one end, verbal correction, the withholding of food, additional labor. On the other end, the flagellum, the iron collar riveted permanently around the neck with the master's name and address cast into the metal. Because a collared slave who ran was a collar that walked home on its own, and beyond that, crucifixion, which was not reserved for criminals in the legal sense. It was reserved for slaves. It was specifically a slave's death. When Romans wanted to communicate the most absolute form of dehumanization available to their civilization, they chose the method they used for slaves. You do not reach the far end of the spectrum, but you learn precisely where you stand on it on a Wednesday in your 4th year. Over something so small that when you try to reconstruct it later, you cannot locate the logic. Something broken, something in the wrong place, something that on a different day, in a different mood, would have passed without remark. The thing about pain administered by someone who owns you is that it carries a meaning that pain from any other source does not. It is not just pain. It is a demonstration. It is the law speaking through a human body, reminding you of your classification. You are not a person being hurt, your property being corrected. You learn the difference between those two things from the inside. It is the kind of knowledge that does not leave. It lives in the jaw, in the specific way you hold your shoulders for years afterward in certain rooms. In the half-second delay before you respond to a raised voice that is not even directed at you. Level 7, the possibility year 6. Something shifts. You are trusted with more. It's not from sentiment. Trust in a Roman household is always economic. You have demonstrated value, reliability, the specific kind of intelligence that makes a slave more useful than a slave who simply follows instructions. You are given minor responsibilities that put you in contact with the household's finances, or its records, or its correspondence. You become what the Romans called a dispensator in the rough sense, not the formal title, but the function. Someone who manages things. This is the door Marcus has been walking toward for 11 years. You see it now differently than you did at the market. The peculium accumulates slowly, invisibly. From tips at the market, from small transactions your master allows you to conduct on his behalf, where the margin is understood to be yours. From favors. From careful, patient accumulation of the kind that requires believing there is a future worth accumulating toward. Some slaves in Rome reached manumission. Freed slaves' liberty became a distinct class in Roman society. Not citizens in full standing at first, but legally free. Their children, born after the manumission, were full citizens. There are freed slaves in Roman history who became wealthy, who owned slaves of their own, who built the kind of lives from the wreckage of the platform that would have been impossible to imagine on the day their feet were chalked white. The empire does not advertise these stories, but they are real. You hold this the way Marcus holds his peculium, carefully, without speaking about it directly, in the place inside yourself where the original name is also kept. Level 8, the weight of the years, year 10. You are older now in ways that have nothing to do with age. The chalk is long gone. Your Latin carries no accent that marks you as foreign anymore. You move through the house with the specific fluency of someone who has memorized every creak in its floors, every draft from its courtyard, every pattern in the behavior of everyone inside it. You are in the language of the household, reliable, trusted. In the language of the law, you are still race, still thing. Marcus was freed in year 9. He cried in the kitchen the night before, not from happiness, from the particular grief of a man who spent 11 years becoming nothing, but the project of becoming free, and who now has to figure out who he is when the project is finished. He left the house the next morning with documents and a small amount of coin, and a face that looked like a man walking into weather he has never stood in before. You watched him go? You stood at the edge of the atrium with your broom in the cold morning, and you watched the door close behind him, and you listened to the iron hinges, and you felt something in the chest that was not envy, and not happiness for him, and not sorrow exactly. It was recognition of the distance still between you and that door, of the fact that you are counting, of the fact that counting is, in this world and under this law, and inside this life that was not chosen, the most human thing left to you. The thing they did not list on the wooden sign, the thing they cannot take, because they do not know it exists. You pick up the broom, you begin the floor. There is a question historians still argue about, whether a life lived entirely within a system designed to deny your humanity can preserve it anyway, not in the legal record, not in the master's documents, but inside the specific, daily, ordinary insistence on counting, on remembering, on keeping the original name in the place where nothing can be revoked. Romans built the most sophisticated legal architecture the ancient world had ever seen. They could not legislate what happened in that place. Think about what it means the people in your own life who carry names that no institution records, who count toward a door that the world around them cannot see. You already know someone like this. You may not have had the word for it until now. If this found you today, leave something below. Tell us what you think they could never take. And if you want to live the next chapter, there are more worlds like this one waiting.